The cameras of The View gleamed under the studio lights, bouncing off the glossy table that separated the hosts from their guest chairs. The set buzzed with pre-show energy, the audience murmuring with excitement, the producers counting down from behind their glass booth, and Joy Behar sitting tall in her seat with that familiar smirk tugging at her lips. She knew exactly who she was about to face. Alan Jackson, the country legend known for his soft-spoken humility and steel-backed convictions. The tension in the air was palpable long before he stepped on stage. The theme music kicked in. The audience erupted in applause, and Joy leaned forward, her voice carrying that practiced blend of warmth and mischief. "Welcome back to The View," she announced, waving toward the camera. "We have a living legend with us today. Grammy winner, Hall of Famer, and one of the best-selling country artists of all time. Please welcome Alan Jackson." The doors opened, and Alan walked out with the quiet confidence of a man who'd seen everything and didn't need to prove a thing. His tall frame moved with slow, deliberate ease, his cowboy boots thudding softly against the stage floor. The audience cheered, some even shouting his name. He smiled, tipped his hat, and gave a humble wave before taking a seat beside Joy. "Alan, it's so great to have you here," Joy said as the applause faded. "Glad to be here," he replied, his southern drawl smooth as honey. "Now, you've been making music for, what, 4 decades?" she continued. "You've seen the industry change in ways most people can't even imagine." Alan nodded, resting his hands on the table. "That's true. Country music's come a long way, and some good, some bad." The audience chuckled lightly, sensing where this might be headed. Joy smiled, too, the kind of smile that hinted she was about to stir the pot. "You've said in interviews before that country music ain't what it used to be. What do you mean by that? You sound like one of those back-in-my-day guys?" Alan gave a soft laugh. "Maybe I am," he said. "But it's not about being old-fashioned. It's about keeping the heart in the music. Used to be, country songs came from real life, heartbreak, faith, family, hard work. Now, a lot of what I hear sounds like pop music trying to wear cowboy boots." That line drew laughter and applause from the audience. Joy's eyebrow twitched upward, but she pressed on. "But isn't that just evolution? Music changes, art changes. If everything stayed the same, we'd all still be singing the same 3 chords, right?" Alan tilted his head, still smiling but firm. "Sure, change is natural, but there's a difference between growing and forgetting who you are. You can move forward without losing your roots." Whoopi Goldberg, seated at the far end of the table, let out a low hum of agreement. "He's got a point, Joy. Every genre's got its identity. You lose that and what's left?" Joy shrugged. "I'm just saying. People used to say the same thing about rock, jazz, hip-hop. It's not real anymore. Every generation says that. Maybe it's less about the music changing and more about us getting older." Alan leaned forward slightly. "Maybe, but I reckon there's a difference between evolution and imitation. If a song's got heart, I don't care if it's new or old. But if it's just about flash and fame, then yeah, that ain't country." The crowd broke into applause again, and Alan nodded politely. But Joy wasn't backing down. "You mentioned flash and fame. You're talking about people like Casey Musgraves, Maren Morris, even Taylor Swift when she started in country?" Alan gave a soft smile. "Those are all talented ladies. But I'm talking about the whole system. Record labels push what sells, not what's true. And somewhere along the way, the music started sounding more like L.A. than Nashville." Whoopi chuckled. "I like that one. Somebody put that on a t-shirt." The laughter eased the tension for a moment, but Joy wasn't done. "Well, that sounds a little bit like you're gatekeeping, Alan. You make it sound like only your kind of country counts." Alan's smile faded, replaced by something quieter but stronger. "Not at all. Anyone's welcome in country music, long as they mean what they sing. It ain't about where you're from. It's about what's in your heart." The applause swelled again, and Joy sighed, flipping her cue card. "You've also said you stay away from politics, which is fine. But don't you think artists have a responsibility to speak up? To use their platform?" Alan exhaled slowly, adjusting his hat. "I think we've got a responsibility to be honest. But that don't always mean being political. Folks don't come to my shows to hear speeches. They come to forget all that noise for a while. The audience clapped and even Whoopi nodded approvingly. That's fair. Joy leaned in again, her tone sharp now. But isn't staying silent also a kind of statement? Especially when the world's divided? Alan met her gaze directly. Maybe, but hollering about every issue ain't gonna fix it either. Sometimes the best way to bring people together is with a song, not a slogan. That line drew the loudest applause yet. Joy smiled thinly, hiding her frustration behind professionalism. You've really thought about this, huh? Alan grinned. Ma'am, I've been thinking about it since I was singing for beer money in bars. The crowd laughed again and Whoopi chuckled, shaking her head. This man came here ready. The air backstage during the commercial break was thick enough to cut with a knife. Crew members rushed about, fixing mics, refilling coffee mugs, whispering cues, but the tension between Alan Jackson and Joy Behar hung heavy across the table. Alan sat still, calm as a man on his porch, one leg crossed over the other, the brim of his cowboy hat low enough to shadow his eyes. Joy, on the other hand, busied herself with her cue cards, flipping through them like each one personally offended her. Y'all ready to keep this civil? Whoopi Goldberg asked, sipping from her tea with that wry grin that usually came right before chaos. Alan chuckled quietly. I was born civil, ma'am. Joy didn't look up, but her voice was tight. We'll see about that. The producer's voice cut through the studio speakers. Back in 10 seconds. Let's keep it moving, everyone. We're live in 5, 4... The red light blinked on, and suddenly everyone was smiling again. Welcome back to The View, Joy said, her voice bright but brittle. We're still here with country music icon Alan Jackson, who's been sharing his thoughts on, well, just about everything. The audience clapped. Though the sound had an edge, they'd felt the tension too. Alan smiled, giving a polite nod. Joy shuffled her cards, then fixed him with that sly grin. So, Alan, before the break, we were talking about how country music's changed. But let's talk about the culture behind it. Some critics say country's been slow to evolve, especially when it comes to inclusion and diversity. You've been around since the 80s. What do you say to that? Alan tilted his head slightly, thinking before he spoke. Well, I've always believed country music is for everybody. I've played shows where folks of every color, age, and background sang the same words. I think music's one of the few things that brings people together. Whoopi nodded. Amen to that, but Joy wasn't done. That sounds nice, she said. But don't you think that's easy to say when you've always been the face of the majority in that space? I mean, some people would say country has an image problem, conservative, white, closed off, the audience murmured. Sarah Haynes looked down, fidgeting with her pen. Whoopi muttered under her breath. Here we go. Alan leaned in, resting his forearms on the table. His voice didn't rise, but there was a weight to it now. You're not wrong that it's got a certain image, Joy, but images don't tell the whole story. Country's always been about life, the good, the bad, the heartbreak. That's not limited to one kind of person. If you've lived and loved, you can sing it. The audience clapped again, but Joy pressed harder. But don't you think the industry should take more responsibility for changing that image? For opening the door to new voices? Alan gave a half smile. I think the door's always been open. The problem is, sometimes people on the outside don't knock. They just assume it's locked. That got laughter and applause, though Joy didn't seem amused. That's an interesting way to put it, she said coolly. But some might say that's a little dismissive. It's easy for you to say that when you've had every door open to you. Alan looked at her squarely, his tone still calm but now carrying a quiet fire. Joy, I grew up in a little town in Georgia. I worked in a car garage before I ever saw a record deal. Nothing was handed to me. I've been told no more times than I can count. So when I talk about working your way in, I mean it. The audience applauded louder this time. Whoopi leaned back, grinning. Well, he told you, Joy. Joy laughed tightly. Oh, I'm not offended. I just like clarity. Alan smiled faintly. Then we're good. Joy flipped to her next cue card, but the conversation had clearly gone off script. You've said before you don't like to get political, she began, but the truth is, everything is political now, even silence. Don't you think you're dodging responsibility when you stay neutral? Alan sighed lightly, shifting in his chair. I get that folks want everyone to take a stand on something. But here's the truth. People are tired. They're tired of being told how to think. I sing about life, not parties or platforms. I figure if I can get people from different sides singing the same song, I've done more good than arguing ever could.